I'd like to call to order, are we on? Can you hear me? I'd like to call to order the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for June 28th, 2021. Please stand as you are able and join with me the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Hutchinson.
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Present.
Ms. Weaver. Ms. Hoppy.
Present.
Mr. Stites.
Present.
Ms. Hulteen.
Present.
Ms. Nosler-Beck.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum present.
Thank you. We have several proclamations, so I'm going to move to the podium. Thank you all very much for being here. We've got some celebration tonight. We've got some special cookies in the back, so if you'll help yourself, we're glad to have everybody here. I want to start with a recognition of Wheat Ridge as an all-American city, and I'm really pleased to introduce two of our councilors who worked very hard on this, Councilwoman Rachel Hulteen and Councilwoman Valerie Nosler-Beck. If you'd come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's here. I'm going to hand it over to Val because she's going to start by introducing our great team.
Hi, everyone. It's awesome to see everyone again. I think the last time we were all together was when we were competing in this really incredible award. I would like to start by thanking some of the staff here at Wheat Ridge, City of Wheat Ridge. Allie Scheck, we'd like to thank you. I just would like to pause real quick and give you a round of applause. Thanks for... You really were the glue that got this whole project over the finish line, so thank you so much for all your work. I'd like to thank Patrick Goff for giving this the okay and believing in this and our work. Sarah Spalding, I don't know if Sarah's here tonight, Steve Art, Marianne Schilling, Marianne, thanks so much. Jesse, a shout out to Jesse for making our presentation look and feel seamless and incredible editing skills on those videos. Thank you. The best. I wanted to also thank Sevco. It's a company here in Wheat Ridge. That's where we filmed and our entire presentation. So it was great to be able to have that resource. And then to our community members that stepped up and put the very hard work into this entire project. I want to thank Jenny Snell, Kathleen Martell, Terry Gale, Morgan Richards, Diana Lopez, Mayor Starker, Joy Opp, Kayla Betzold, Adam Wiley, and Kate Cook. I don't know if Eugene was able to make it, but Eugene really helped us out and also had to practice his acting chops in all of this. So Eugene from Colorado Plus, if you're online or anything, thank you so much. I want to give a special shout out to my dad, Dave Nosler, who grew up here in Wheat Ridge, and to my kids, Talia and Coco, who also participated. So thank you so much. This was a real community effort. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also just need to thank Rachel. Thanks for everything in this project. It was great working with you.
Well, and of course, I have to thank you, Val. All right, so what are we talking about here? Before I do that, we just called off a lot of names. You were most of the people here, but just raise your hand if you were one of the names that was called so people can recognize the All-America City team that's here. These are amazing people. So what is the All-America City Award? Well, it is a national competition that takes place every year, and hundreds of communities across the country submit rigorous applications trying to demonstrate what makes them an All-America city. So the first round, we were selected as one of 20 finalists, and we submitted an application that really made the case for, I mean, I think everyone in this room probably already believed a year ago today we were an All-America city, but we really had to make the case about how our community and how our government work together to address the real challenges that we face here, because that's what makes cities great. And when Val and I approached Patrick, and he kind of had deer in headlights, because it is a rigorous, time-consuming process, there was never any hesitation that we wouldn't get the recognition. So we had to submit 3 projects that really demonstrated what we do to work together. And the themes this year were around equity and resilience, and we were like, that's Wheat Ridge. So we presented the Wheaties Academy, which was a project or a program that helped develop grassroots leadership in our community as one of our projects that we felt really demonstrated how the community and the government work together. The next thing we presented was Sustainable Wheat Ridge, which is just an exciting example of how our community volunteers are really leading the change in our community to become a more resilient and sustainable community. And then our last project was something we called Wheat Ridge Together, which was just really a collection of all the activities that have happened in the city in the last year to both respond to and also try and step into the national movement around equity, the challenges we faced around COVID, and trying to keep our government working and accessible while we were being shut down. So we submitted those. We were one of 20 finalists. So then we had to present to hopefully get one of 10 designations that they give every year. And we had to do a 10-minute presentation that we rehearsed, and we had great stage direction thanks to Steve and Allie. And we had to tell the story about, how does Wheat Ridge address change? We said our challenge was that every community addresses change. We were really trying to do it in a way that stayed true to our heritage while really trying to step into, what our future had in place for us. So we did our presentation, and while doing the presentation, we started the application knowing in our hearts that we were an All-America city, but it was actually the act of preparing to perform and to compete that to me really galvanized what makes Wheat Ridge an extraordinary city. And I might get a little emotional, but it was a complex presentation, and we had to talk about challenging things, and they were personal, and we heard voices in our community, and in real time we're listening and incorporating and changing how we did things. And even if we didn't actually get the designation of the award, I couldn't be more proud for how we went about this and who we are today and who we are moving forward. And it's because we've got great citizens, great people who work for the city, represent the city, and it's a really great place to live. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chief Murtha, I believe, who is going to talk about a couple of other aspects that we did with this nomination and award.
Thank you. Just checking earlier, Chance Mead wasn't in the room. Chance, did you sneak in while my back was turned? Okay. I know he's a busy man, and I just wanted to introduce to this group one of the great members of this community, really. As we look at this city as an all-American city, it's made up of all-American people, I guess. And we certainly, I think the youth are embodied by Chance Mead, an individual who was nominated by the city for the Youth Award. He did not win, although he should have. We were probably robbed on that one. But I had an opportunity to meet Chance as a member of our Community Advisory Committee our school resource officer, we reached out and said we want to diversify our group. We want to hear more voices. We want to hear from the youth. And immediately, our school resource officer stepped up and said, I've got the perfect person. And when you meet Chance Mead, you realize he is the perfect person, a mature young man with an incredibly bright future, comes off right away as the right person to have in the room when you're having a conversation about the city, about the future, and about all things Wheat Ridge. Is a very good cheerleader for the city, and his maturity is well beyond his years. So I think of him as an All-American youth. He's I believe, a junior. I may get that wrong, at Wheat Ridge High School. I'm not surprised he's not here. In our first meeting, I think I saw Diana Lopez in here. I think he left because he had to go to baseball practice in the middle, and he was in the middle of fixing his motorcycle to get to our meeting. So he overcomes obstacles, and there's no challenge too big for him. I think he's given me some real hope for the future of the next generation. He's one of those people that makes you think that, yes, we'll be fine tomorrow. And when I'm no longer able to stand up and do for myself, people like Chance will step in and take care of people like me. So that being said, while he didn't win, I think maybe a big round of applause for Chance Mead and his effort.
Thank you. So Chief Murtha was referring to, there were a lot of other aspects other than just competing for the award. There was this Outstanding Youth Award that they gave. We also were part of, which was an optional cultural entertainment showcase, but of course we didn't think that was optional because we have great culture in this city. And so we submitted 3 different videos that highlighted just, some of the culture that we have here in our city. And one of the ones that I just think captures Wheat Ridge, and if you ever have someone who's never been here and who wants to know more about our city, I think this video is a great opportunity for them to know more about it. So are we cueing the video? We are. This is the magician Jesse. He does his thing.
Look at that. Boom.
Okay, wait. Oh.
Millions of leaves and needles.
Sorry, so while he's doing this, so this is, we have a city poet, and she wrote a poem about being Tree City, USA. So this is our city poet reading her poem and highlighting what makes Wheat Ridge a great place.
Millions of leaves and needles in a forever view here in Tree City, USA. Buds, flowers, cones, branches on every ridge, road, street, and shaded avenue, planned, protected, cultivated for me and for you. Feeling the ambience of a small city high, where you do not have to pay to enter round, seeing hundreds of birds that define the sky, nature's art lifting you off the ground. There is so deep a reality within your heart. Love, a river within you, a current so joyful, in neighborhoods where you feel you belong, finding all kinds of families built ever so strong. In winter, when junipers are shagged with snow, and Clear Creek burbles gently through ice, spring, summer, fall, firm ground below, a beer and a pizza on the ridge would suffice. We have big plans for this welcoming place, for each who calls Ridge City their own, friends who spend their time treasuring our open space, backyards where children explore and become grown. When we close both our eyes to see with our other eye, building on things that happened years before, reminders of what we now choose to preserve, a landscape blanketed by trees we adore. Touch the ancestral spirit of this city, transcending boundaries of age, income, race, and understanding that like trees, people are healthy when connected in sunlight to a loving soul space.
Okay, we also notified the congressional delegation that we had received the All-America City Award, and so Congressman Ed Perlmutter, who grew up in Wheat Ridge, was really excited about that, and so he placed in the congressional record a proceeding, within their proceeding and debates, an official congratulatory note to the city of Wheat Ridge. And so I'm going to just not read the whole thing off to you, but I will read the last little bit. It says, I extend my congratulations to City of Wheat Ridge on this recognition and their work to engage and evolve its community, particularly during a very difficult year. Keep up the good work. Sincerely, Ed Perlmutter, Member of Congress. And then we also got a video from Senator Hickenlooper congratulating us. So Jesse, you're on again.
Congratulations, Wheat Ridge, on your award as National Civic League All-American City. As a former mayor, I know full well how hard the community had to work, the city staff, the council, everyone had to put their all in this. Wheat Ridge has been resilient from the beginning of the pandemic all the way through and continues to build a civic infrastructure that is promoting equity and is willing to tackle racism at the fundamental level. I heard this was the winning slogan, so let's give this a try. Wheat Ridge, together.
Well, I'm really honored to read the following proclamation. The All-America City Award. Whereas the All-America City Award program, the flagship program of the National Civic League, has for 72 years recognized innovation, inclusive, and collaborative problem solving in more than 500 cities and communities across the nation. And whereas the All-America City Award is the nation's oldest and most prestigious community-wide award. And whereas Wheat Ridge, Colorado was recognized as an All-American City winner in 2021 for demonstrating a high level of overall civic capital, including strong civic engagement, inclusive leadership, and collaborative problem solving. And whereas Wheat Ridge, Colorado made a presentation before the national jury of experts, and whereas Wheat Ridge, Colorado highlighted 3 innovative collaborative projects that demonstrated equity and resilience. And whereas Wheat Ridge, Colorado developed a grassroots leadership program, prioritized environmental stewardship with resident-led initiatives, and collaborated to support residents during a year of social unrest and a global pandemic. And whereas the residents of Wheat Ridge, Colorado demonstrated their belief in themselves by spotlighting local solutions to society's complex issues. And whereas Wheat Ridge, Colorado was named one of 10 All-America cities on June 9th, 2021. Now therefore be it resolved that Wheat Ridge, Colorado is a national model of what can be done when people dream about what can be done and go out and do it. And witness whereof on this 28th day of June, 2021, Bud Starker, Mayor. And I want to present this to you all for the city. Right, we're going to do that.
If you were, what? Oh.
Thank you. If you're part of our team, I'd like you to come forward and really make it. Can we stand in front of the dais up here? So all of the folks who are involved in making this happen, come on forward and let's have you up for a photo op. Yes, I know. And well, why don't you guys all come up in front of the dais, and then our Mayor Pro Tem is going to give you directions on site, and we'll get you up there. I've got one more introduction to make and a few more things to do. I have another, we got one more introduction to, you know, we're not done yet. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce Kiva Hummel, who is the Director of Civic Engagement at the National Civic League. Kiva. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kiva Hummel, and I'm the Director of Civic Engagement with the National Civic League. And it is my distinct privilege to join you this evening to help you celebrate and commemorate being named a 2021 All-America City. As we've mentioned, now in its 72nd year, the All-America City Award recognizes and celebrates the best in American civic innovation. The award, given yearly to 10 communities, more than 500 in all, recognizes the work of communities in using inclusive civic engagement to address critical issues and create stronger connections among residents, businesses, nonprofit, and government leaders. The 2021 award theme was Building Equitable and Resilient Communities. As such, the 2021 awards recognize communities that have worked to improve equity and resilience. Wheat Ridge first submitted an extensive 20-page application back in February, which described 3 projects around this theme, as well as the strengths of the community's civic capital, what the League calls the formal and informal relationships, networks, and capacities that enable communities to solve problems and to thrive. Wheat Ridge's application was then reviewed by a panel of 10 experts in civic engagement, resiliency, and equity. The review committee found Wheat Ridge's application to be strong in the areas of collaboration, resident engagement, and inclusivity. Therefore, in March, Wheat Ridge was invited to be one of 20 finalists. From March to June, the Wheat Ridge team worked tirelessly to bring their application to life in the form of a 10-minute presentation to an 11-member jury made up of government, nonprofit, and business leaders. This evening, you've heard about the inspiring projects featured in that presentation, and I'm happy to share what stood out to the jury during their deliberations. The jury was incredibly impressed with your performance and presentation, and that all the projects were, quote, grassroots and driven by the community, end quote. The jury felt that Wheat Ridge was, quote, embracing and welcoming of all residents, end quote. And were impressed with the dedication to both, quote, short and long-term community engagement, end quote. Finally, the jury was won over by Wheat Ridge's, quote, unique and scrappy community spirit, end quote. Ultimately, the jury felt that the application and presentation met all the necessary criteria and was happy to designate Wheat Ridge, Colorado as a 2021 All-America City. It is my honor to present your winning plaque. Congratulations, Wheat Ridge Together.
Yep.
I think we need one. Wheat Ridge Together. Ready? We practice. Exactly.
I was still extremely happy to be there and participate, and I was extremely happy to get nominated by Wheat Ridge Police. So all in all, I love the experience, and I hope that I can try and make it the rest of the way next year.
Okay, thank you all very much. Great job on the award. Really a terrific honor for our city, so thank you all very much. There's the All-America. Really? Okay. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. We have some more proclamations tonight. I'd like to invite Karen O'Donnell and Susan Anderson and Zach Lovato up to the podium for a recognition of July as Parks and Recreation Month. So, thanks for joining us. Hey, and we've got the whole team here. That's right. Okay. This is a proclamation in support of Parks and Recreation Month in July 2021. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Wheat Ridge. And whereas our parks and recreation programs are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for individuals with disabilities, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, and the attraction and retention of business and crime reduction. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Park and Recreation Month, and whereas the City of Wheat Ridge recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, and the Wheat Ridge City Council do hereby proclaim July 2021 as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
So I'll just start with following up after the All-America Cities. That's a tough act to follow. But I wanted to take a moment to really introduce these three individuals. First of all, I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation, Karen O'Donnell. Susie Anderson is our Recreation Manager. Zach Lovato is our Parks, Forestry, and Open Space Manager. And Booster the Rooster is our mascot. Booster boosts morale both for staff and for our participants. And also, Booster is currently being played by Beth June, who is a recreation coordinator who oversees youth and therapeutic programs for us. So one of the things I wanted to mention is, as Parks and Recreation professionals, we typically love what we do and we're very passionate about serving the community. And while the proclamation means a lot to us every year, this year it particularly means a lot. It's been a really tough year. So I wanted to mention, I also oversee our facility operations division. We don't have anybody here tonight representing that division, but they worked tirelessly to make sure we had safe and clean facilities for all of our staff and all of our residents. Our Parks, Forestry, and Open Space division, led by Zach, you probably all know this, but nationwide, parks trails and open spaces saw greater participation than ever in history. And that requires a lot of additional staff time and attention. And they did that without seasonal staff this past year and did a tremendous job. And our recreation division, I think having weekly COVID meetings with our citywide team, my personal opinion is the recreation division had the hardest task of keeping up with changes in regulations, often daily, weekly, monthly, and did such a tremendous job to make sure that all of the opportunities were available for our community. So I'm super grateful for this team, for everybody that works within our department, full-time, part-time, seasonal. We just have such a fantastic team that really delivers for this community. So thank you all. Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for your constant support. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see. For our next proclamation, I'd like to invite a friend of mine and a very good friend to the city of Wheat Ridge, Tom Abbott, to come to the podium. Tom, would you come on up here, please? Stand up here next to me, okay? Good. Because I want to read a proclamation in appreciation of Tom Abbott in recognition of his dedicated service to boards and commissions. Whereas the mayor and city council of the city of Wheat Ridge formally express appreciation to Thomas Abbott, who has dedicated his volunteer service to the city of Wheat Ridge board and commissions. And whereas Thomas Abbott has dedicated 35 years of service with an unwavering commitment to the city's boards and commissions. And whereas Thomas Abbott began volunteering with the city of Wheat Ridge in early 1986 on various boards and programs, such as the Arborist Board, the Board of Adjustment, Wheat Ridge 2020, the Charter Change Committee, and lastly, serving on the Housing Authority Board until April 2021. And whereas over the past 35 years, Thomas Abbott led by example through several tenures as chair, the crafting of many thoughtful motions, and a strong commitment to making a difference for the community and the city. And whereas it is fitting that we formally recognize Thomas Abbott's many contributions to the city of Wheat Ridge and its boards and commissions, and express to him our sincere gratitude for his decades of service and outstanding contribution to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of the City Council and the people of the city of Wheat Ridge, I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim appreciation to Thomas Abbott for his 35 years of service to the City of Wheat Ridge boards and commissions on this 28th day of June, 2021. Bud Starker, Mayor. Tom, thank you very much.
That's the nicest thing anybody ever
Well,
said.
it's great to have you here. You want to say anything? You want to say a couple of words? Sure.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you to the city of Wheat Ridge. I'm one of those strange birds that actually likes going to meetings. And so I want to thank everybody for 35 years of meetings. I enjoyed every one of them. Thank you. It's the nicest thing anybody ever said.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see, we have one more proclamation, and I'd like to invite Kia Ruiz and Millie Nadler to the podium. I'm drawing a blank. Morgan Richards, too. Thank you. I know, that's why I always write these things down. How are you all tonight? This is a proclamation to honor Juneteenth on June 19th, 2021. Whereas this nation was founded on the principle stated in the Declaration of Independence that, quote, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but in which people who were black were held in slavery. And whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, which states that all persons held as slaves with any state or designated part of a state shall, quote, be then henceforth forever free, changing the legal status of 3.5 million enslaved people who were black from slave to free. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation paved the way for the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas news of the Emancipation Proclamation did not reach the most distant slave states until federal troops arrived at Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved peoples were freed. And whereas the Day of Respect and Remembrance, called Juneteenth, a combination of the words June and 19th, is observed as an important day in our nation's history. And whereas Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, and Celebration Day, is a federal holiday celebrated on June 19. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and serves as a reminder of the inequities faced by black people throughout our nation's history. Now therefore I, Bud Starker, call upon the city of Wheat Ridge to join us in recognizing Juneteenth 2021 and urging all community members to work together to advance the principles of equal rights, justice, and opportunity for all, regardless of race, gender, age, religion, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity and expression. In witness thereof, on this 28th day of June, 2021, Bud Starker, Mayor.
Good evening. I'm Morgan Richards, and I'm the founder of Wheat Ridge for Equity. Juneteenth became a federal holiday on June 17th of this year, 2 days before the actual holiday on June 19th. While this newly designated federal holiday is important in acknowledging 400 plus years of intentionally ignoring and harming black people, it did not yet bring any significant policy change. It is important to consider the two roles white people must fulfill on Juneteenth. One, we support the celebration of those whose black ancestors were freed from enslavement. And two, dedicate ourselves again to using our white privilege to ensure that Wheat Ridge is truly welcoming and safe for all. We may erroneously think of Colorado as not being a state with enslaved people. Starting in the 16th century, indigenous people were enslaved here in this area. After enslavement of black people was abolished, Colorado and other states exploited a loophole of the 13th Amendment, which allowed slavery as a punishment for a crime. This loophole remained in our Constitution until 2018, when 65% of voting Coloradans said it was time to remove this Jim Crow workaround. This was after a failed attempt to change our Constitution on this point in 2016. Please sit with that a moment. Until 3 years ago, it was still legal to enslave another human being in our state. And 35% of voters that year voted to retain that in our state constitution. This work of equity in our community is often uncomfortable, and it is vital and critical work where we must hold each other in honesty and accountability while giving each other grace for the mistakes we are going to make. And that includes myself and everyone else who has showed up and helped make Wheat Ridge for Equity land with such impact. I thank you. This recognition of Juneteenth tonight is very appreciated.
everybody. My name is Kia Ruiz. I'm probably one of the few Black and Indigenous people you know. I can say that with some confidence given how many times my picture showed up in the All-American City video. So thank you. I love Mayor Starker. I love a number of people up here. How about next year the proclamation happens maybe in 48 or 50 weeks instead of after Juneteenth? Just kind of throwing it out there. But thank you, and I look forward to the city working together on some of these issues that were talked about in the All-American City application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilors, in your packets, you have the City Council minutes of June 14th, 2021, the special study session notes of June 14th, 2021, and study session notes of June 21, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes and notes as presented? Seeing none, we'll let those stand as presented. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will let the agenda stand as presented. We are now at our public's right to speak. This is the opportunity where members of the public are invited to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. If you wish to speak, you'll please come to the podium. I will call your name. We have a list of our speakers, and when I call your name, if you would come to the podium and adjust the mic so it's easy for you to speak into. If you would please give us your first name and your last name, and if you would please spell your last name for the record and give us your address, then you'll have 3 minutes to speak to the council. And if you are here to speak on another item that is on the agenda, we will have a citizen's right to speak at each agenda item. So our first speaker, I believe, is Derek Netzel. Come forward, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Derek Netzel. Last name's Nedzel. I live at 4460 Yarrow Street. I've been requested by the residents on the 44th and 4400 and 4500 blocks of Yarrow Street to come here and to request the City Council's help in solving a problem we have on our block. We have regularly, meaning every day, cars driving 60 miles an hour or faster on our street. We've actually had cars going so fast on 46th Street coming onto Yarrow Street that they've ended up in people's front yards. We've had fences knocked down by cars rolling into people's front yards. The Wheat Ridge Police Department did an investigation a couple years ago, and they agreed with us. They said this was perhaps the worst problem with speeding in the entire city. So we've been working with the city for 2 years to try to get speed bumps installed on our block. And for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. So I was asked by the residents on the block to come and represent all of us in requesting the city's help in resolving this issue. And just so you all know, we haven't completed the list of people and signatures that were required to get the speed bumps done, but we still haven't gotten them done. So please help us do everything you can to speed the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that we have we've got a program that supports speed humps, and I assume that you've gotten the literature on that and working on that. So hopefully we can make that happen. Thank you so much. Our next person signed up to speak is Guy Namiach. And And just before you get going, Mr. Namiach, we're back in session now, so I've got to refresh myself on what we do when we're live. We have some timing lights on the podium. So the green light appears when the speaker commences. The green light flashes when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining. The yellow light will appear when the speaker has 15 seconds remaining. So please conclude your remarks. And when the red light comes on, we ask you to close it up. So take it away.
I'm ready.
Continue.
Green light. Guy Namiach, Nahmiach, 3650 Ward Road. I just wanted to, I read the city census, which I love, and of course I went right for the communication. I was blown away where 72% of Wheat Ridge residents point to the Neighborhood Gazette as their main source of news and information. Woo-hoo! Love it. I wanted to thank Patrick Goff, Ali Sheck, Sarah Spalding, and of course Chief Murtha and everybody on the staff for the partnership. It's been really a great ride. Thank you very much to all the readers that post pictures of their papers being delivered every month on their doorstep. And God, who said, Guy, no one reads newspapers? And it's been great. So I just want to thank you for the partnership. Go Wheat Ridge.
Thank you. Those are all of the people I have signed up to speak. If you haven't signed up to speak but would like to speak on any item not on the agenda, you may do so now. Even though you haven't signed up, please come to the podium. So is there anyone further wishing to speak tonight under public's right to speak? All right, then we will close that portion. Oh, I guess before we do, yes, we thank you to my Mayor Pro Tem that we have a study session tonight, and when we do, generally we'll take comment on the study session items up at this time so that we have those taken care of. We have one action item, and as the Hotel Motel licensing program. So if you would like to speak on that item, you may come forward now. If there's anyone here to speak on the study session item. I don't see anyone, so thank you very much for reminding me that. We will take care of that order of business. And with that, I think we're ready to get going with our business meeting. So, agenda item number 1. Mr. Urban, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 34-2021, a resolution approving a major subdivision with 2 lots and dedication of a public street at 4100 Wadsworth Boulevard in the mixed-use commercial MU-C zone district, case number WS-21-01, Macatracha replat. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a major subdivision on the property located at 4100 Wadsworth Boulevard. The purpose of the request is to subdivide the property into 2 lots. As part of the subdivision, staff is requesting dedication of right-of-way to accommodate a full-width public street on the eastern portion of the property designated as Vance Street.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on a resolution of the council. It is quasi-judicial. If you intend to speak on this item, by speaking, you will agree to tell the truth as you understand it, and I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff report?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott Cutler, a planner in our Community Development Department.
Good evening, everyone. This is only my second in-person presentation in like a year and a half, so give me a second.
That's all right. We're all pretty young tonight, so.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready. So my name is Scott Cutler. I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. This is case number WS-2101, which is a request for approval of a 2-lot major subdivision with dedication of a public street located in the mixed-use commercial zone district. I'd like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. Properties within the City of Wheat Ridge and all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, so City Council has jurisdiction to hear the case. Thanks. This is a 2020 aerial view of the property. It's outlined in red, and it's just under 2 acres. It's currently 1 lot under 1 ownership, and it's located on the east side of Wadsworth Boulevard, east of the Town Center Park, north of Safeway, and south of the post office and Big Lots. It's primarily commercial in the area, but there is residential located to the east along Upham Street, but there is no connection to that street. The site contains a single-story office building on the western half of the lot, and the eastern half of the lot is vacant. There are numerous access easements and private drives that connect this site to other properties and to Wadsworth. The subject site is zoned mixed-use commercial, MUC, as are all of the properties in the surrounding area along Wadsworth. To the east on Upham Street, properties are zoned R3 and R2 and contain a mix of residential uses with two-story multifamily on the property immediately to the east. The subdivision regulations are found in Article 4 of the zoning code, and it's a reconfiguration of lots, tracts, or parcels for sale or development. The plat is a technical document that removes, creates, and defines property lines, allows the city to evaluate right-of-way, and allows the city to evaluate civil construction documents. Plats do not change the zoning, the permitted uses, and it does not look at the site design or building placement for individual properties. It simply enables development already permitted by the current zoning. So the request this evening is to create 2 lots out of 1. One lot is for the existing office building on the west side, which would be retained by the current owner. And then the second lot is being created for future development, and a site plan is under review by staff for that lot. The subdivision also dedicates the eastern 52 feet of the site as right-of-way for a public street, which would be called Vance Street. There's an existing access easement in this location, but it would be upgraded as part of construction on the second lot. The plat also creates utility and drainage easements and upgrades existing access easements for the fire department and access to the new lot. New development on the site will be required to comply with the MUC development standards. The applicant's submitted site plan demonstrates Lot 2 is developable. A multifamily use is proposed, which is permitted by the underlying zoning and is compatible with the adjacent multifamily development, as well as commercial uses. This is an excerpt of page 2 of the plat document, which is Exhibit 3 in the Planning Commission staff report. Lot 1 is on the west side and is where the existing building is located, and then Lot 2 is on the east side, which is the future development site. The area shown as Tract A is where Vance Street is dedicated and is outlined in red. The area is already an existing access easement, but will be upgraded to a city street with sidewalks, curb and gutter, and parallel parking. And I'll show how this section of Vance Street ties into the street network in just a minute. This slide shows some of the easements dedicated by the plat, including a stormwater drainage easement in the northeast corner of Lot 2 and access easements along the southern portion of the lot, which lines with the existing parking lot in Lot 1. There are also some existing 30-foot access easements along the west side and north side that are not changing as part of this plat. This is a diagram which shows the network of the right-of-way and access easements in the area. The area is bounded by 38th Avenue, Upham Street, 44th Avenue, and Wadsworth, and the city considers this a super block, which means that there's no public street connectivity throughout this area. City documents and city code call for improved connectivity. We've taken an incremental approach to improve connectivity in this area, which began with the dedication of Vance Street between 43rd and 44th Avenues in the Town Center subdivision, which is to the north, shown at the top of this diagram. The proposed right-of-way dedication on the subject property aligns with the Vance Street segment to the north and existing access easements to the north and south. The proposed dedication is also consistent with the historic cross-access easement in the same location and connects to easements on all sides of the property, which would allow public access to and from this right-of-way to other public streets. We sent the application on referral to outside agencies, including the Fire District, Water District, Sanitation, and so on, and completed an internal review. There are no remaining comments on this application, and both planning and engineering have found the plat to be approvable. There are construction documents for Lot 2, which are under review by engineering, and a site plan is under review by the Planning Division, but these documents are not part of this presentation or decision. Before the hearing, the property was posted for 15 days, letters were sent to property owners within a 600-foot radius, and comments collected on Wheatridge Speaks would be reviewed by the City Council, but we did not receive any comments for this application. And on June 17th, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request. Ultimately, staff has concluded the request meets the subdivision regulations and all agencies can serve the property. It will allow the development of the vacant areas permitted by MUC zone district to proceed. For all of those reasons, staff is recommending approval, and I can now answer some questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Goff?
No
Wait,
applicant
applicants,
presentation,
okay.
but they are available if there are questions.
Thank you. Before we go to questions from council, I will open this up to comments from the public. If I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this, if you haven't signed up but would like to speak on this agenda item number 1, you may do so now. Coming forward, I don't see anyone. There's one person coming forward, so if you'd like to, would you like to speak? Oh, okay, very good. No. Okay. So I don't have anyone from the public here to speak, so I will open that up to questions from council. Do we have any questions from council on this item before I close the public hearing? Ms. Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, would you mind going back to the slide that shows sort of the streets and alley designation, the Christmas colored slide?
I can. I do not know how to lower that.
Yeah.
You guys can see it. They can't see it.
Okay. Oh.
We're good.
It's so fun to watch that go up and down. We all really appreciate it. So my questions about this, I am very familiar with this alleyway. I ride my bike quite a bit back through there. And I'm just seeking a little clarification on how the city views the differential between having this small street section designated a street and then the other areas are considered alleys. And can you just talk a little bit about sort of the treatment of that and how that's sort of viewed as part of the street network?
Sure, yeah, so what the areas that are shown in green, those are all access easements. So when those shopping centers were built, they were platted as public access easements, which means you can drive your car, walk, get deliveries through that area. And then all of the red is city streets. So the difference would just be that the city would be maintaining this portion as well as the Van Street portions to the north, as opposed to them being on private property. But it all falls into the regional connectivity goals of the area, and when we can get right-of-way to improve it to a public street, we'll be able to do so. The decision tonight wouldn't affect the alleyways on the other properties. It's solely what's along this property.
So with that being designated a street, then it'll have the same requirements and treatments as if it was, I'm going to say, a more normal or regular street. So it would have a sidewalk on it and be treated just like another regular street development.
That's correct, yes. So if and when that vacant lot develops, it would be required to be upgraded to a public street with sidewalks, parallel parking, 2 travel lanes. So it's a significant improvement over what's out there right now.
Okay. All right. I think that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close the public hearing, any other questions? I'm going to close the public hearing and oh, I'm sorry, Judy.
Thank you, Mayor. I needed to drive by this because I can't tell what this is by looking at the aerial view. So I did drive down there. When the construction would be going on, I do have just some concerns about how it could possibly affect deliveries of the other commercial buildings that are in the area. I say this just because this would be a construction site that is out of view of the general public. Nobody's going to be seeing this going on very much, except I do see there are more people that are kind of hanging out by Safeway. So I am considering the issue of safety, for one thing, because there is a site, a construction site right now on 38th Avenue, where today actually was the 6th day that I found the fence down around the construction site. I don't see an address on that site. And also, my concern is like oversight of the construction process. Who in the city is going to be watching out what's going on?
So if there were to be construction on the site, there would be multiple departments involved with the approval. Building department, obviously, for any sort of construction, and then because it is being built as a public street, Public Works would be managing any of the construction in the right-of-way. That includes closures of the street, detours, things like that. So building department for the on-site, and then Public Works for the off-site street construction.
Like how often would they be going by? Because this one construction site on 38 that's right on the main street, and this is just happening over and over, and I know people drive down 38. This is a site that people won't see. So I'm just concerned, like, if we have more people who are hanging out in the shopping center and things like that, it's a safety issue for me. I just would like to be assured that there will be oversight of this construction site if there is one.
Ms. Hutchinson, we've recently made some changes in our staffing organization. As you recall, we made changes, I can't remember how long ago it was now, when we moved engineering into the community development department and created Greg Knutson was promoted to our public works director, and that opened up a vacant position, Greg Knutson's old position. We decided to recently fill that with another engineer in the community development department that will allow us to provide more inspection and oversight of development projects across the city. It's kind of an area we've been lacking to monitor private developments, and so we're hoping with this change, we'll have better oversight of these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close the hearing now, any further questions? Okay, I am going to close the public hearing. Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 34-2021, a resolution approving a major subdivision with 2 lots and dedication of a public street at 4100 Wadsworth Boulevard in the mixed-use commercial MU-C zone district for the following reasons. City Council has conducted a proper public hearing that meets all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 and 26-407 of the Code of Laws. The requested subdivision has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendation of approval. The subdivision plat has been found in compliance with Article 4 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws. All agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. And with the following conditions, the developer shall enter into a subdivision improvement agreement with the city at the time of recordation of the subdivision plat. The applicant shall pay the required fees in lieu of parkland dedication at the time of building permit if residential development occurs. Minor corrections to the plat labeling and symbology as requested by the engineering division shall be made prior to the recordation of the plat Mylar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Hulteen. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Used the wrong board. Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All 6 members present voting in favor.
Thank you very much. We will move to agenda item number 2. Ms. Hoppy, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 10-2021, an ordinance amending chapters 2 and 26 of the Code of Laws of the City of Wheat Ridge to prohibit tents and makeshift structures within the floodplain and to amend the floodplain permitting and variance processes. Mile High Flood District MHFD regulations specifically prohibit tents and makeshift structures in the floodplain due to numerous public safety issues. Staff is requesting that council amend the city's floodplain regulations in Chapter 26 to adopt similar regulations. In addition, staff is seeking to improve the approval process for the Class 2 floodplain permit and the appeal process of flood managers' decisions. Among the changes, staff has proposed to remove the Board of Adjustment as the review and approval body for floodplain permits and to add the Building Code Advisory Board as the body to hear appeals.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the time, date, and location for a public hearing. Ms. Hoppy, a motion is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill Number 10-2021, an ordinance amending Chapters 2 and 26 of the Code of Laws of the City of Wheat Ridge to prohibit tents and makeshift structures within the floodplain and to amend the floodplain permitting and variance processes. Order it published, public hearing set for July 12, 2021 at 7 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers, 7500 West 29th Avenue, if allowed to meet in person on that date per COVID-19 restrictions, and that it take effect upon adoption and signature by the mayor and city clerk.
Second.
It was close, but Mr. Stites got the second on that. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. With that, we will move to agenda item number 3. Ms. Hulteen, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 11, 2021, an ordinance approving the disposal by demolition of city-owned buildings associated with the Improve Wadsworth project. At issue, the city owns 2 buildings along Wadsworth Boulevard that were purchased in order to provide the necessary right-of-way to improve Wadsworth Boulevard project. These 2 buildings need to be demolished in order for the street improvements to be constructed. Staff is requesting authorization from council to demolish the buildings.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. Ms. Hulteen, may I have a motion?
Yes, I move to approve Council Bill number 11, 2021, an ordinance approving the disposal by demolition of city-owned buildings associated with the Improve Wadsworth project. Order it published, got to look at it this way. Order it published, public hearing set for July 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in City Council chambers, 7500 West 29th Avenue, if allowed to meet in person on that day per COVID-19 restrictions, and that it take effect upon adoption and signature by the mayor and city clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Urban. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I can remember in high school, a couple of my buddies used to work at the TCBY, which was in that building. So
Wow.
this is, a lot of memories in that building. And so.
Well, you might want to tell them the bricks are going to be available for,
Okay.
if this motion passes,
Yes.
or at least if we get it on a public hearing. So, all right. If there's no more discussion, if the clerk would please poll the council.
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you so much. That concludes our regular agenda items, our agenda for tonight. We will now go to city managers' matters. Mr. Goff.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. We will go to city attorney's matters. Mr. Dahl.
Nothing for me as well. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will ask if there are elected officials that have anything to offer tonight, and if you would, please raise your hand, and I will call on you. We'll start with Ms. Hoppy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say my personal thanks to everyone who worked on the All-American City Award and our city councilors. We already put a lot of time into the work that we do here, and so to take that on as an extra time, I really appreciate that. I'm super honored and excited, and thanks to everybody who worked on that and all of our citizens who stepped up to do that. We do have some really, really amazing citizen groups in our community, and so thank you for that. And I also just wanted to say thank you to Tom Abbott. He and I have sat on several boards together, and I'm definitely enjoy my time with him. And so thank you very much, Tom, for your work for our city.
Thank you. Any further public officials matters? Ms. Nosler-Beck.
Thanks, Mayor. I had an invitation come through from Adam at the World Mission Society Church of God, letting me know that there's going to be a cleanup on Wednesday, June 30th from 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. They're expecting upwards of 40 volunteers to do a cleanup at 44th Avenue and Kipling. You can meet them there.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also just wanted to thank Tom Abbott for 35 years of service. I'm 38, so I was here when he started. But So thank you, Mr. Abbott. It's really impressive. I also wanted to say, as the 4th of July approaches, we've got fireworks going on in our city, and I'm not going to say anything about it except take care of your neighbors. That's kind of the biggest thing, and if you can find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge.
Thank you. Any other, Mrs. Hulteen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple things. I want to just recognize our Parks and Recreation department. I will say they're responsible for keeping me sane during COVID. They worked so hard to make their facilities available and accessible, and I just really appreciated it. I know a lot of people in our community benefited from their very rigorous and day-to-day changing work environment in our community. I moved here in part because I'd been going to that rec center long before I lived here, and I'm really proud of our Parks and Recreation. On that note, I have been working with them on the Conservation District grant that we were awarded. And I just want to thank everyone who came out on the 23rd for our first Regenerate Wheat Ridge public program at Happiness Gardens. It was called Start with Soils, and it's the first of 5 classes that are offered. The next one is on July 14th. It's going to be at Lewis Meadows, and it stars Wheat Ridge's beloved goats. It's called Why Goats. These are free and open to the public, and are opportunities for our community to learn how to augment and enhance their own regenerative agricultural practices in their backyards. So with that, I look forward to seeing some of you guys on the 14th with the goats.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
We're starting to get questions about the election, which will be held 4 months from now on November 3rd. There are 5 seats open for election, the mayor's seat and 1 council member in each of the 4 districts. It is unlawful for persons to begin to collect signatures to put their name on the ballot before 12:01 a.m. August 3rd, 2021. Consequently, we will not distribute those petitions, which the city clerk's office is obliged to provide, until August 3rd. Anyone listening who's interested in working on a campaign or would like to run for office should feel free to contact us and to consult the city's website. More and more information will be available. I just want to make it clear to people that there's not much you can do except fill out one form which says you intend to run between now and August 3rd. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Clerk Kirkpatrick. Any further elected officials matters? Well, I'll sort of conclude our council meeting by jumping on to what my other councilors have said. Congratulations and a hearty thank you to all the folks who worked very hard to work on the All-America City Award. It was really a great presentation. You know, what impresses me is that we have a great city. And when you have a great city and you're working together and you're doing things together and listening to one another, you can get things to happen. So thank you all for that. I want to express my appreciation to Tom Abbott. He's been a faithful servant to our city, a great worker, and a great participant in making this the city that we have. And I want to thank his service. School is out. Please be careful as you drive around. We've got some great, lots of great youngsters out there playing, and we want to make sure that everybody gets through the summer and the rest of the year safely. So thank you all for coming. We will conclude our city council meeting now. We will stand adjourned. We will reconvene in about 5 minutes for our study session. So thank you. All right. Are we ready to? We ready to roll? Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the special study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for June 28th, 2021. We have just one action item, Hotel Motel Licensing Program on item number 1. We have already called for public comment. We did not have any of the public come forward to comment on this item. So I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Patrick Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council. We're happy to be in front of you again this evening to talk about a problem and an issue and a concern that we've had in our community for quite some time, dealing with some of the impacts of some of our hotels and motels in our community. And I think you're well aware of those issues. We've discussed them with you numerous times in the past. The police department has provided updates and done PowerPoints showing some of the calls for service that we have at these hotels, and the chief will give you an update on that this evening also. But two items were on City Council's priority list prior to this most recent strategic plan, and one was a hotel motel strategy to address some of these impacts that we're seeing, and then also a extended stay lodging potential ordinance was also a priority of City Council. And tonight we're hoping to provide you with an outline of a potential ordinance that will address both of those priorities. And if we get permission this evening, we will bring an ordinance back for study session in the future. And I want to turn it over to the chief first, and he'll give a little bit more detail about what the problem is and what we're trying to solve. And then Mr. Dahl, our city attorney, will discuss an outline of a potential ordinance that we can bring forward to you in the future. Chief?
Thank you, Patrick. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here to discuss the problem. I don't want to beat a dead horse because I know we've brought this problem in front of the council many times before, and we've discussed what I think you all intuitively know is an ongoing issue. Some of our hotels don't operate in a manner that allows for reduction in calls for service, or actually they operate in a manner that requires an increase in our resource allocation to them. So in 2019, I submitted a report that illustrated 7.5% of all calls for service that were citizen initiated were attributed to hotels in the city of Wheat Ridge. City of Wheat Ridge, usually the top 3 or 4 hotels are in our top 10 calls for service, again illustrating the resource strain on our police department and the amount of time that we spend dealing with calls for service. Unfortunately, in 2020, and actually today, I finally got our analysis from our personnel, many of whom were on vacation, unfortunately. We found that problem hasn't decreased. It's actually up to 10% in 2020. Our number 2, 3, and 4 highest calls for service come from hotels. You can imagine where those hotels might be located, but we have some very good hotel operators in the city, and you can see that there is a contrast, I think, in the packet. You can see the difference between certain hotels and their business models. What we're looking to do is to address, number 1, the resource drain, which if you look at it in conjunction with what I talked about last week, our relationship-based policing model that we're trying to go to, that model requires that we have some time to go out and interact with the community. And the more opportunities we have to solve long-term problems, such as the resource drain that hotels cause, the more opportunity we have to engage with the community and continue to build relationships with our community. So this, for us, is an important issue in the police department. Our calls for service there between human trafficking calls, serious calls for assaults, calls for drug dealing, calls for stolen vehicles, recovered vehicles. We're one of the leaders in the region in recovered stolen vehicles in some of our hotels around the I-70 and Kipling corridor. So that being said, I think it's pretty clear there's a problem. We know that there are people who are precariously housed at these hotels, and sometimes for a long term. And I say precariously housed because many of those folks, we come to find out, don't have the credit to move into an apartment or other housing, but they have enough money to stay under a roof. And I think Mr. Johnstone has said many times before, the hotels in Wheat Ridge are not really situated in such a manner that they provide services for the folks who be there. So those people tend to wander about, and they come into our purview, and we end up dealing with them. So there's an ongoing problem there. I think it's fairly obvious, and it's well stated in the statistics that you see. Our goal here is to resolve the problem. Unfortunately, as we researched it and worked with Mr. Dahl to find solutions, there's really no one national model that we can follow and say this is a proven model. We looked at a Kansas City model, a Jacksonville model, a Los Angeles model. I think we found one from Jefferson Parish in Louisiana. That was a model. And really, as we looked around the country, we come to find that Lakewood has the best model for us, or a model that's similar to what we would like to do. And when we talked about this model and what it would resolve, we thought, you know, we've seen results where we put a little bit of pressure on motels. We've seen results where we've asked people to employ security, to create a security plan. So we know that there's potential there for good, positive results. And we think that's going to be the case, and we think we're not going to be the epicenter of some of these types of calls that I just described. So with that being said, I think Mr. Dahl has gone a long way. We discussed earlier in our conversation really focusing on the licensing aspect of this, and I think he'll discuss that tonight and how we might leverage some of that. Our goal in the police department is not to put anybody out of business, just to make sure that people are good stewards of the community trust that the city of Wheat Ridge allows for. So that being said, I'm hopeful that we get good direction tonight and we can work together to move forward to present something that you find appealing.
Terrific. You have in your packets a memorandum from myself, Mr. Goff, Mr. Murtha, Division Chief Lorenz, and Ken Johnstone. And starting on about the second page, pardon me, of that memo is a little bit of an outline. And we, as the chief said, we looked at the Lakewood ordinance, I looked at the Jefferson Parish, Louisiana ordinance, and you can find little nuggets in each of them, and then you end up kind of assembling something that you think might work here, making it somewhat a little more streamlined than the Lakewood approach. But the heart of this, and what I do want to do, is tick through a few key points about licensing for hotel motels and then extended stay lodging as an approach, which is really a zoning approach. And Ken Johnstone's, I think, August 19th memo that is also in the packet outlines that, and I can hit a couple points there because that's a zoning approach, which is fine. That's really where it should be housed. No pun intended. Tough crowd tonight, tough crowd. But the hotel motel licensing process is a licensing approach that would likely end up in Chapter 2 or Chapter 11 in the code and would not be a zoning approach. So it'd probably be two ordinances, but we're clearly addressing two parts of very much an integrated whole as a problem. But my goal is to kind of tell you about the outline, and then we can have discussion and see if we get direction from you to say, yes, write an ordinance that more or less does that outline and bring it to us. And perhaps without the need for an additional study session, because this is at a pretty good level of detail. I can write an ordinance from this outline easily, although I will be interested in your comments on it and changes to it. On the second page is really where it starts. It says recommendation for a hotel motel licensing program. Obviously, you'd always start with some findings. If you're going to add additional regulations, there needs to be kind of a legislative purpose. And those findings you see over on page 2, I won't read through them, but they really mirror the kinds of concerns the chief was mentioning that council is well aware of and don't need me to repeat. Then you have definitions. You've always got to define things in an ordinance if you're going to regulate them. I put down a few there, but there will be others, of course. Then at the bottom of page 2, really top of page 3, a real key provision here, and that's the licenses required. Right now, these businesses have business licenses and sales tax licenses, and that's it. There is not a license to operate that kind of business. It's just a business license. And what is being suggested here as kind of the heart of the approach is you need to get, besides just a business license, you need a hotel license. And here are the rules for that. And you've got, in order to continue to operate, you've got to have a hotel license and your business license. You lose your business license, that means you lose your hotel license. You lose your hotel license means you lose your business license. They're together, and losing either one or becoming ineligible for either one means you cannot operate, which is, severe, but it is the way to get attention so that you can impose these other requirements, which I'm about to talk about. Obviously, you'll have an application form. I'm down to number 4. This is another fairly important part of the ordinance. And well, what are your eligibility requirements? What have you got to do to get this new license? And there are 6 standards here, and I know you've seen these in prior meetings. I'm at the sort of the bottom half of page 3 of the memo. I'm not quite sure where that is in the packet, but it's page 4 of the packet. Okay. Eligibility requirements. Now, these are important. To begin with, achieve and maintain some call for service ratio. You've seen this data from the police department before, and the number of calls per room, et cetera. I haven't put down exactly what the call for service ratio metric would be in the ordinance because, frankly, we're still working on that. There are various approaches. Be curious your thoughts about these. I'm not expecting that we would devise a numeric standard here tonight. Instead, I would ask you, if you're interested in this program, to direct us to continue to refine what we think the right metric would be to be able to plug in. But that's a key metric, and you've seen the data. There's some motels that have such a low call for service that they're going to satisfy that right away, and you're aware of kind of the range of compliance we have around the city. But that's a very important part of the metric. And then there are the others that are less objective and a little more subjective, but frankly easier to achieve. Participate in the Certified Crime-Free Hotel Program, certain corrective matters, because we've got the Hotel Motel Inspection Program that we do see all of these rooms once a year. That is a program the city does follow, and that's great. And it always results in a list of things that business X has got to do. So do that. Demonstrate compliance with the landscape inspection program. Again, trying to improve the quality of the facility. Compliance with the building codes, because again, this is being used more as housing. And an approved security plan, which is, again, part of the whole package about not only safety for the residents, but safety for visitors passing through that just think they're going to spend one night at this budget motel, and we've all done that, haven't we? I'm just going to be there for 8 hours, then I'm off to Omaha or wherever, and then you get up in the morning and your car's been burglarized, and that's a real issue. And so I think the security plan is important. Those are the criteria to be eligible for the license. And you'll notice it ticks off the six areas that we think are problem areas that need to be addressed. And I think it'll be incumbent on the city, if it does this, to provide resources to help people, achieve this and give them ideas and tools. Bringing me to the next page, I promise I'm almost done. Of course, if you fail to maintain these standards, your license is subject to suspension and revocation. If it isn't, then it's a toothless program. And these are the grounds: failure to meet the eligibility requirements we just went through. I went and looked at the city's social club licensing ordinance. It's one that's not used very often, but I helped write it, I forget how long ago, and I thought, let me look there and see if there are any little guides around that, because to some extent it's a little bit like the same kinds of impacts that you worry about. And I pulled a few things from that program that would be a reason for suspension and revocation. The manager and employee offers for sale illegal narcotics or dangerous drugs. There's not a licensed manager all the time. These are all things that will contribute to safety. The licensed manager or employee allows or permits acts of prostitution on the premises or adjacent. Would be reasons that typically you wouldn't lift a business license for that. It just wouldn't be on the radar screen for a business license. The suggestion is it should be on the radar screen for a hotel motel license. Obviously, you need to be in good standing in the state of Colorado as a company and not delinquent in payment of fees. Those are kinds of things I think you probably lift a business license for. Then if you're going to have a grounds for suspension or revocation, you should have a process. Many of these ordinances lay that on a city official, and we do have the city treasurer. City treasurer is here tonight. And that's a choice, obviously, you make, but it's when the city treasurer's office, is actively engaged in licensing activity and on the business license level. It seemed to make sense with an appeal to an administrative hearing officer. Then I also added you've got to notify us if stuff happens. Now, this is kind of lifted from the bars, from the liquor license requirements. If there's a fight in a bar here in Wheat Ridge, you as the bar owner or manager are required to report that to the police department. If you don't, if you try to sort of control it yourself and let's just deal with this, that can be a ground for suspension or revocation of your liquor license. It occurred to me that some of the same approach might be appropriate here, because it will be there will be an incentive for a hotel to try to get its calls for service down by not reporting the problem. And yeah, the calls for service go down, but it doesn't mean the problem has gone down. You have just hidden it. So there's that. Going over to the last page, which is really the schedule. And I would think that probably we'll want to say the ordinance is immediately effective, but not unlike the massage parlor ordinance that we did. You've got this much time to come into compliance. It just wouldn't work to call up these motels and say, hi, there's a license that you've got to get and you don't have it. So obviously we will want to have outreach and work with that affected community to try to build a time frame where this could be slotted in. Before I quit, I do want to note that it's a structure for hotel motel license with extended stay authorization. And the extended stay is addressed largely within the memorandum that is attached somewhere in the packet, I think it's toward the end. It's an August 2019 memo from the Community Development Department. And it's regarding extended stay, defining what extended stay is, permitting it in certain zone districts, then requiring certain physical characteristics of the room and of the property, such as to allow extended stay as a use. And I think it's important to talk about in-room characteristics, common area characteristics. And what I think Ken Johnson of the Community Development Department has done here is to say if it's going to be extended stay, there should be a minimum level of services and facilities in the property itself and in the room that lend themselves to an extended stay. And we know what I'm talking about. If you rent a usual hotel room, and okay, now you're going to bring in a hot plate and you're going to bring in other things that really lend themselves more to a typical hotel room is not going to have that, and therefore doesn't lend itself well to that kind of extended stay. And if it's going to happen, then it really ought to have the facilities necessary. And that's really the import of the memo that you have in August from Community Development Department. And we would want, I think, to link these or not. You could probably get an extended stay license or permission, separate and apart. Quite likely you're also going to want to get your hotel motel license. Now, do you add the extended stay option to it, kind of like extending your warranty on a car or whatever, or not? That would be a choice, I think, that the hotel property could make. So you either add that on and decide that that's a market you want to also promote, but it will mean you're going to have to be adding facilities and changing the nature of the rooms that you're going to be renting for that, what Ken suggests. Extended stay, and here we'd have to talk about, well, how many days in a calendar year equals extended stay, and that's kind of a policy choice. Thanks for your patience in listening to me cover a lot of material, but I think we're quite far along the road to being in a place where we could have an ordinance that you could look at that comes to you on first reading and maybe needs a little work, but is getting there.
And Mr. Johnstone is on Zoom this evening. I think, can you see him on your screens? If you have any questions, or Ken, I'm not sure if Ken, if you have anything to add before we take council questions.
Thanks, Patrick. No, I think Jerry covered my bases quite well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, then we'll open it up to questions from council. Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say that I appreciate the pivot from the direction, because I feel like we had like 3 other study sessions on the other direction that we were trying to go, and we were, whittling a dead stick, really, trying to get that to work. We have been asking nicely for this particular area, and the hotels in that particular area, to clean up their acts for many years now. I think it's appropriate to draw a line in the sand and say, here's the line. And if you want to operate as a business in our community, this is how you do it. So I appreciate that. I have one question about the hotel motel licensing, and then I have one question about the extended stay. So the hotel motel licensing, under the eligibility requirements, when I was looking at that, I wondered if it's something we should consider of the calls for service, if the CFS should maybe start like in the first year at like a 2.0 or something, and then second year it needs to be a 1.5, and then the third year you need to be below like a 1.3 and maintain below a 1.3. And the only reason why why I'm wondering if we should consider that is because it takes time. You can't really close the doors, clean the whole place out, and kind of start over. So I just wonder if that is something that, Chief, do you think that that would be an effective way to address that? Or do you think that we should just kind of go straight out with it's 1.5 and that's just the way it is?
Quite honestly, in our discussions, that was a point we struggled with. And how would we get to the right number? We didn't really ever figure out how Lakewood came up with their number of calls for service, other than we surmised it was an average. But I do think that a graduated scale is really what we were kind of, I think, discussing amongst ourselves as a good way to not chase businesses and future businesses out, but to give people an opportunity to come in compliance. Ultimately, that's what our goal is, and when we begin to socialize this program amongst the hotels, we hope that they see that as just an opportunity for them to get to up their business a little bit without being punished right away. So yeah. I think it's right in line with our thought process. And I don't want to speak out for Mr. Dollar or Mr. Goff, but I think that's what we were thinking.
I agree. You can achieve that. The challenge they have is changing their model overnight, which is impossible. And it's improvements to the rooms. It's probably improvements to how they message to their clients, how they advertise, things they'll do outside. There's so many things here that it is a gradual process in the best of times. And so I agree with you, Councilmember, and with the Chief that the idea should be to give incentives and a pathway to success rather than sort of a really high wall you've got to jump over, even if you're given 6 months to get ready to jump over it, which we would do toward the end here. We'd also have some time frames before the ordinance became effective. But if it becomes effective, does it become effective at the ultimate call for service number, or does it become effective at a higher number, which then can go down? I think in the end we might find better success if we allowed that rather than set up the high wall to begin with. I support that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and then actually, so now I have one more question on this one then. Did we consider or look at I don't know how often we pull the CFSs for those properties, if it's monthly, if we know where we're at, or did we consider that that it's at some point, if they start getting high, to put them maybe on notice? These are getting high, and you need to, if you're going to maintain for the rest of your, you have 3 months till the end of your business license, you need to get that cleaned up, or you're going to be past your average. Is there some way that we'll be communicating that to them, or will it be a surprise? Surprise, you're over.
We try not to surprise them, but that's a very timely question, Counselor, because about 3 months ago, we had an ongoing issue, maybe 4 months ago, with a property. And my question to our analysts was, do we have our top offenders? Are we looking to take those top offenders and to try and promote better behavior out of them, or are we just waiting till something bad happens? I don't want to get too far on a tangent, but I talked about researching some of the other jurisdictions and their approaches, and many of them were just reactive. If a hotel got really out of hand, then we would move to close it. And I thought that's a terrible approach for us in Wheat Ridge. We wouldn't probably want to do that. We would want to try and get people on the right path ahead of time. So I think when I discussed that with staff and said, listen, I need to know the top 10 places that we receive calls for service. We know Lutheran, by the nature of a hospital, is always going to have a lot of activity going on over there. But we can really look at some of these other places and ask ourselves a question, what can we do to stop this before it becomes a problem for us and reduce our resource load? So yes, we are starting that process. It's really only been a few months that we've done that, but we're starting to see success, and we're not seeing the same places come up consistently where they had in the past when we asked for a snapshot and didn't do it consistently. So we're on the path to what I think you're thinking about.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Johnstone, on the extended stay lodging, there was a piece in there where it said existing hotels and motels may be allowed to convert a portion of their rooms to the extended stay rooms, provided they meet some, but not necessarily all of the in-room and common area characteristics summarized above. And so my question is, if someone wants to convert some of their rooms, have we, because above that it says we could give a grace period of 60 days for them, or to be determined for them to come into compliance. But then if they want to convert some into extended stay, so to be clear, coming into compliance means they take the hot plates out of the rooms. They don't allow the people that are staying there to have, cooking utensils in their rooms. They really are a non-extended stay room to become in compliance. But then if they want to convert a portion of their rooms, there would have to be construction. And so was there any kind of discussion about how long we think that we could give a hotel if they wanted to convert some of their rooms to extended stay? Like how long do we feel comfortable enough to give them that time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, we acknowledge that there needs to be a reasonable transition time. So have we given it sufficient thought to kind of give you a concrete answer to that question? Probably not. We're also sensitive, as we've tried to reflect in the staff memo, to the fact that there's a housing issue here that we want to not negatively impact in terms of people's housing options. So our overall intent, I think, and it requires some additional thought, is just to be flexible in our approach to that. That if there are operators that want to bring rooms up to a more reasonable standard to what would be expected for extended stay, that we want to be able to create a process to allow them to do that in a reasonable fashion.
Great. And then my only other question is really kind of for council. There was, under exceptions, there were things to consider as exceptions, and there, persons in family in crisis that are receiving temporary housing assistance from a government, charitable or insurance agency, a resident, on-site manager, or family members caring for someone in a long-term hospital or rehab situation. So I was just wondering if we could also consider persons experiencing homelessness that are actively working with our homeless navigator, because now that we have our homeless navigator, we have that piece. When we were originally looking at the extended stay and knowing that people utilize our hotels for their permanent housing, we didn't have the homeless navigator, so now we do, and I would like for us to consider, if they're working actively with our homeless navigator, that could be an exception too.
Yeah, and I think that's a great reflection of the progress that we've made since that August 2019 memo was produced.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is long overdue, and I think that we've extended a very sort of welcoming attitude towards our lodging partners in the city, and I want to see us do a better job at sort of dealing with the stick aspect of this. And the hotel owners that we have in the city haven't shown to me, and I haven't seen much evidence to the fact that they've been working with us as partners on this issue. And so I'd ask us to really do what we can to get this going as quickly as possible. And I think the way that we've set it up works for what we have, and I don't see a whole lot of extended stay going on, but I think it makes sense to have that. And I would say that our concern about the affordable housing aspect of this, or the persons experiencing homelessness, the hotels and motels we have in the city are the least affordable housing ever, anywhere. This is not an affordable housing option for people. This is where they get stuck, or where they end up, and not where they're choosing to be, and it's incredibly expensive. So it's doing a disservice to them to suggest that this is where they should be. So we want to do what we can to not make that an issue. Thank you.
Ms. Hulteen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support Councilmember Hoppy's suggestion to have some sort of probationary or warning system, so that if hotels and motels are reaching sort of that tipping point, that they're put on notice and aware of it. I think it's important that we are, again, working towards solutions and not waiting for them to fail, in part because, a lot, they're housing, as we just discussed, people in our community who are dependent on that availability. This whole conversation reminds me of a time where I got stuck in Newark, New Jersey, and they put me up in a motel in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I literally had moved all the furniture over my door and was hiding in the bathtub all night. And so I will never go back to Elizabeth, New Jersey. It was a terrible experience. And, when you were referencing people who just happened to, pass through our community and grab a hotel there, I don't want that to be their impression of our city. So I'm excited that we're looking at moving this forward. For the extended stay, the common area characteristics, and I'm not sure, how picky we're getting on this tonight, other than the general direction, but there's a list there of some suggested common area characteristics that we'd require for extended stay. And, a couple of these, like a heated swimming pool of a certain size, I don't think should be a requirement. That seems to not always be the best use of space. And my experience is not a lot of people in extended stays use the pools. And we have an amazing rec center just down the street. So I'd like to suggest we don't consider that a requirement. A requirement I think we should consider is, I know it says business center, but that they provide decent Wi-Fi as a requirement. I know that we assume all hotels and motels have that, but we should list it specifically as a requirement if we're trying to attract that type of clientele. And I agree with Councilmember Urban. Let's get this moving as fast as staff can, because it's long overdue.
Thank you, Ms. Noslerbeck.
Thanks. I really like the idea of including the homeless navigator, the connection there with the program, to make sure that the right hand's talking to the left. And sorry, my mute's not off on my computer. And then also in the work that we're doing with the hotels and motels, I think it's also important that we are working with the neighboring businesses as well to provide some education on how this program is going to be implemented. A lot of the neighboring businesses have reached out to me and probably other members on council wanting to know what we're doing about this issue. And so I think some education, I'm happy to help in reaching out and making sure that, we're trying to get the hotels and motels to get into compliance as a good business in good standing in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Stites?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. How much input has any of those hotels or motels had in this process? Have they been reached out to? Have they?
Yeah, we reached out. Ken made an attempt a year or so ago to reach out to the industry on the extended stay portion, and I'll let him speak to that. But we communicate with our local hotels almost on a daily basis. I'll let the chief speak to that.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to meet with some of the hotel owners and try and gain their compliance, trying to build a relationship with them. But I forget which counselor alluded to it earlier. You know, we've been nice and we've tried the nice approach, and it just, you know, it doesn't pay off. It seems like some of these are absentee or out-of-state owners who just care about the bottom line. So having some sort of stick, to use Mr. Urban's term there, I think is important in this. But yes, we have reached out. I'm looking forward to socializing this a little more. I think that's an obligation of the police department to go out and say, this is where the council's at with their direction. You know, if you want us to bring some of your ideas back to the council, we'll gladly do that. And I'll communicate those to Mr. Goff and Mr. Dahl, and we can let you know what their pushback might be, and maybe they see something that we don't see right now. But once we get clear direction, our officers, and we do have a team of officers up there that are communicating with businesses, so that'll be an easy conversation for us. But we will take it up there and ask for their input. They're the other half of this equation, and I think if they see this is coming, regardless, they're going to give us good input. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. I just was kind of wondering how helpful they've been in this process, I guess, because my impression is they haven't been. You know, and somebody who grew up here, you know, 15 years ago when I got out of college, I was really excited. I think I was talking to somebody in Thornton or something like that, telling them I grew up in Wheat Ridge and how great Wheat Ridge was, and they said, Wheat Ridge, isn't that place off I-70 with all the hotels? And like that was like a gut punch for me. So I definitely think that that's something it's been a black eye in our community for a long time, and if it's not been cleaned up by now, it's probably not without some intervention. So I agree with Ms. Haltine, Mr. Urban, I agree with everybody. The additions that were made by Ms. Hoppy and Ms. Haltine, I agree with as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hutchinson.
I do support this, and I think it's a long time coming, so I support the changes that have been introduced. And I think we should work on this rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Johnstone, can you refresh my memory? I was at the 2019 study session, but when we were talking about the different extended stay characteristics, as I remember it, there were definite what needs to be in the rooms, but the common area characteristics was not an all or nothing. It was kind of like we could maybe pick and choose what would be appropriate for that property. So like adding a heated pool for a property that's already built would not be appropriate. But that's how I remember it, is that they didn't have to have all of the items on the list. We could just kind of pick and choose some of the common area items. Is that right?
Yeah, your recollection is correct. The idea was that we didn't need to define the business model for each and every extended stay lodging option, but give them kind of a potpourri of options of what they could provide to meet our requirements.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Urban.
Housekeeping. And I think that's really what we're doing here is we're attempting to clean house in this area. So I'll make a consensus to move forward this licensing program and the extended stay recommendations that were made by other council members.
Okay, we'll continue to have a show of hands. Let's keep it virtual. All right, thank you. So,
Very
Mr.
good.
Dahl, we have a consensus to move forward, and I think it looks like you've done quite a bit of research and work on this. So hopefully you can bring that back in pretty short order.
Yep, we'll
and
get busy drafting right away.
Move this down the process. That sound right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that was our single item, agenda item, action item. Any staff reports?
That's it for staff this
Goff.
evening. Thank you.
And any other elected officials reports? I see everybody kind of bagging up their things. So with that, we will thank you for your participation in our study session. We will adjourn this study session. We will be back, let's see, we will not be back next week because we will be celebrating Independence Day.
Yes, July 12th is our next meeting, yes.
And so we will be back in July 12th in study session, correct?
A
Oh, no, that's...
regular meeting.
That would be a regular meeting.
Business meeting,
That'd be
yes.
the second meeting. So anyway, a regular meeting on the 12th. We will before then be celebrating the 4th of July and our independence. And so I want everyone to be really safe out there. There'll be a lot of people on the road and a lot of activities going on. So be safe, take care of yourself, and have a lot of fun, and we'll see you again. So good night.